Hello and welcome to Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. Today, our special guest is Erik Holvik. Did I pronounce it right?
You did.
And Erik is a sage. You know why Erik's a sage? Because he works for EnergySage, and they go around EnergySage and all kinds of stuff. So, like, if you know somebody, maybe get them EnergySage. Hey, Erik, does that make you like some sort of a guru, or isn't a sage a guru, something like that?
That's how we came up with the name back in 2009 when Vikram was writing the idea back on a napkin.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you got that napkin?
I wish. I hope he has it framed somewhere.
Yeah, because like I remember one time there was this guy in the Philippines, and we started this company together called Solar Philippines. And it's a big company now. I think it's on the stock market and $1 billion or some kind of crazy thing like that. And then like we were sitting in a restaurant. I won't tell you which one because it might be incriminating. And we wrote the agreement on a napkin, and I still have that napkin. And we had a falling out. And then some people are like, yeah, save that napkin, man. Take him to court on all this kind of stuff. And it was interesting too how we had a falling out. It was like, I got out of his car in moving traffic. Or no, they don't have moving traffic. It's all stopped traffic there in the Philippines. In fact, we even came up with the name of the company in stopped traffic. But anyway, it was like, I've seen him since, and I don't think there's no grudges or anything like that. It was just like, different styles and all that kind of stuff. But
It happens.
anyway, napkins. I must think like writing something on a napkin and getting somebody to sign it. It's an easier way to get somebody to sign something because they're like, hey, it's just a napkin and it holds up in court.
Have you tried writing on a napkin though? I've done it before, and depends on the napkin, but I have ripped and gone through multiple napkins doing that.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And then one time there was like an envelope agreement that I had, like me and this guy, Dennis Nelson. He's not in the solar industry, so I could say his name. Plus, he owes me $1,000 or whatever it is. This is a long time ago, like probably 25 years ago or something like that. And we got an RV together and we wrote the agreement on an envelope. And then he like screwed me over. Screw as in nail, like that kind of screw, not like any kind of bad word. And then I took him to small claims court with the envelope, and the judge like gave it to me. He said, I won. He still owes me the money though, is the problem. I think it like ruined his credit or something, but he didn't really care.
I feel like you have trouble with napkin and envelope agreements. That's the trend that I'm hearing.
Yeah, but it worked. I never tried to enforce the napkin one. And if it wasn't on a napkin, I don't think that he would have signed anything, like, because he would have wanted to have all these attorneys and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that if he had all these attorneys, they would have left him all these ways out. Yeah. And what would have happened is he would have just renamed or reincorporated the company and put like a different letter after the name of the company or something. And there's so many ways out. And it works. I think it served its purpose. And I still have that napkin. Maybe the guy, I think actually somebody told me he's running for office, and I know like he wanted to be president of the Philippines, and he's like part of a political dynasty. So someday, if he's president, that napkin might be worth something.
Bring
like
that napkin in, cash it out or something.
Yeah. Or I could write a book or something like that. But
True.
How I jumped out of the car. And, but yeah, so EnergySage. There's all these gurus out there. One thing too that I was like I was listening to some EnergySage podcast at the gym this morning just to get me in the mood. And I know that I've pirated some of your stuff. Like you guys have some good graphics on your website. And I think I've walked by the booth like, hey, I got some of your stuff on my slides. Do I have your permission? They're like, yeah, no problem. And I give credit whenever I do something like that. I just put a link to the page where I found it. And if anything, I'm sure it promotes you, whatever.
It happens all the time. We'll be on a site where, oh, there's our logo.
Yeah.
Cool. That's awesome. Free marketing for us. We'll take it.
Yeah. And I put a link to your website, and
Great.
It is an advertisement really. And because you have some educational stuff. And so then what I was thinking is it's like I'm educating the solar industry, and you guys, so I guess maybe that's what they call B2B, business to business. Mm-hmm. And then you guys are educating the consumers mostly. So that's like B2C. Maybe you do some B2B too, I guess.
We do a bunch of B2B. That was my world at EnergySage for 4 years before I moved into a corporate development role. But We were talking with contractors all the time. We aggregate all of this data to help installers expand, but also understand their markets. We can see equipment trends, what's happening there, pricing, financing options. We're not really showing TPO that much. We're looking to do that a little bit more because it's a lot of the market share, but we're very much helping the B2B. However, we are very much a consumer first platform. It's how EnergySage has grown, is protecting the homeowner at all costs from any shady sales tactics, or if someone comes and knocks on their door, they're able just to do like a gut check and a reference point to see if what they're selling is in the right ballpark for what it should be, which has been really helpful for a lot of consumers and what keeps EnergySage around.
Cool, cool. And so
Yeah.
you were at the NABCEP conference recently, right?
Yep.
And at that conference, there was a guy that was like a Nevada legislator. Did you see his speech?
Yeah. Great last name for a senator too.
What?
It's Donate, but it's spelled as donate. And
Oh,
I'm like,
yeah. Oh,
that's
yeah. I
just
remember that. Okay. Maybe
just
that's why.
I just find it funny. I'm like, that makes sense.
Yeah. And he was young. Like, there's no way he could run for president. He was like more likely
No.
president of his high school, that the way the age that he looked. Do you have any idea how aged Donate was?
No, I have no idea. I know that he's a newer member, but they've been trying to push that policy out for a while. And it actually went through last year, which is great.
Hmm.
Steve Hamill over at Solub was the one who kept pushing it for, I think he was trying to push it for 2 or 3 years, trying to get that legislation passed.
So you must know more about it than I do. So maybe you could mention what the legislation is. I know that one of the things that he was talking about is the solar bros. And so I was using that throughout my PV associate class the whole rest of the week, talking about solar bros. And so he's pretty much talking about the solar salespeople that are unethical. And I think that's
Yeah.
like a huge problem in the industry. And so, do you remember what his law did? I know that I was there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so there's two parts to it, and it lasts for a while. I think it lasts for 3 or 5 years after contract or after installation. But essentially is if you're a salesperson in Nevada, you need to be a W-2 employee. You can't be 1099. And then on top
Oh,
of
yeah.
that,
Okay.
you need to have a contractor's license in that state with the company that you're selling
Uh
for.
huh. Yeah.
So if that company doesn't have a contractor's license in that state and you're selling for them, that installation happens. I believe it's 3 to 5 years. If you discover that, you can then file, and then I'm pretty sure they'd have to pay everything back.
Wow.
Pretty sure. But it's got some teeth to it. It's pretty interesting. What happened in Nevada is going live in Utah May 1st
Oh, awesome. And
too.
that's
So
interesting
it's
too, because
expanding.
I think like Utah is like the Mecca for like
Yeah.
solar sales, just because
Yeah.
Utah is famous for being really good at selling things door to door, including God.
Yep,
Uh-huh.
100%. That's where, correct me if I'm wrong, but like solar kind of took off in Utah and then
Uh-huh.
expanded from there
Yeah.
because of the best way to sell solar is at the kitchen table with someone.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
It's solar is a want, not a need. So if you can actually sell the like emotional side of solar to someone at the kitchen table, it's a way better, way easier sale than them comparing quotes online and seeing what their best options are. It's a safer version for a homeowner, but it gives more control to the homeowner rather than the salesperson.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know that like door to door sales people for solar get a bad rap, and a lot of it's deserved, but I know that there's good people out there too that are doing it. And
Yeah,
also, like, to become a solar salesperson, I get calls all the time, and they're like, "Yeah, I want to take your class because I heard that I can make $20,000 a month." And, and so this guy, Senator Donato, was saying that the way that he got inspired to make this law and be like the big advocate for reforming solar sales and solar was that his parents got scammed
yeah,
by somebody, and they thought they were going to go save the planet, and everything the person told them wasn't true, and they signed it, and they got into some kind of fine print contract. And he also heard from different constituents about the same thing, and So he went after him, and he like
Yeah.
pretty much they shouldn't have sold that to his parents. It really messed up their little thing they had going. And apparently that some of them do make that kind of money, and it's hard probably to give it up. If you can just go out there and sweet talk some people and make 20 grand a month when you're like 21 years old, is you're
Yeah.
probably going to do it no matter if it's ethical or not for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I mean, for not for everyone, of course, but it gets really tempting. And so that's one reason why it's good to have some kind of law like this. That,
Yeah, it's regulation. The
mhm,
solar industry hasn't really been a regulated space, and now they're
mhm.
starting to put in different policies to keep people in check,
Yeah.
and which is a good thing. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's making people do the right things. But I don't blame the door knockers. Like they're coming in, talk about selling for 3 months in the summer before you go back to school and cashing out. Like that helps pay for your tuition.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you do what you got to do to pay the bills. And a lot of the times it doesn't really screw as a nail, screw over the homeowner. Like it very much there's better options out there. It might not be the best option, but they're still saving money and they have panels up on their roof.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure like it teaches them going door to door and all that kind of stuff. Like I've done it for different things when I was a kid and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it builds character. It's just
Yeah.
it's scary to go knock on somebody's door. And so it's there's like benefits for just like personal development and stuff like that. And like you said, yeah, they're just like could be out there doing something in between college summers and all that kind of stuff. So one thing that I was trying to do too is put together like a campaign to educate the people that are doing this because a lot of them could probably make a good living, maybe just as much, and also not rip people off if they understood what they were selling. Another thing that I do too is like when I get calls by these, I could tell like within the first 2 words if they're like that type, like they're in sales and stuff like that, is I go like, oh, are you guys NABCEP certified? And almost every time they say yes. And almost every time they're not. And that's a good way to weed them out. And I even have a little thing on my website and also on the NorCal Solar Nonprofit website where it talks about how to screen people out. And a good way to do it is to catch them in a lie. And if you could catch them in a lie just by going, are you NABCEP certified? And they say they are, then you got them. And you know what was funny is yesterday, somebody called, they were selling leads. So those are people that are maybe hiring the door knockers or cold
Yeah.
callers and things like that. And then they get a bunch of leads and they try to sell it to contractors. And I have a contractor's license. And so I was like, oh, you can help me out? I know how you could help out more people. Will you be on my podcast? And he's like, yeah. And I was about ready to climb on a podcast. So I was like, yeah, just send me an email. You got my email? He's like, yeah, but he never did. And I was going to expose him on the air, pretty much like on a podcast.
That would have been a fun podcast. I
Yeah.
would love to listen to that one.
I know. I'll work on it. I'm going to figure it out. I'll do it one of these times. And I know
You
there's
should
these.
edit that one. You shouldn't have other people edit that one so
Oh,
you
yeah.
can make sure that the person is stumbling over their words
Yeah. Yeah.
and everyone hears it too.
Yeah, and get their name and all that stuff and go, wait a minute, you said you're an AppSec certified. I don't see it there. Maybe the next time they do it, I'll just be like, oh, can you talk to me on Zoom? And go, you're on a podcast. See if they hang up or something.
That'd be awesome.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And one of the things that I've been doing lately too is, you know how like cold callers and like people that are like contacting me on LinkedIn or like maybe an email is instead of just like blocking them, I troll them and I like make up stuff that's like kind of crazy and then put it back in their space or try to sell them on a
Yeah.
class or just turn it around and see them get all flustered. It's
My
like instead of getting upset, I just crack up
Well,
or
so
do a
it's funny
joke.
because
Yeah.
I get called all the time, just different industries. That doesn't really
Yeah.
matter, not even solar specific, but the business development team drives them nuts because I'll go through and then say afterwards to the person, I'm like, do you want some tips? Like, there's some things that you probably could have changed in your verbiage. Like, could have closed me a little bit better. Like, happy to provide feedback if you want it. And they just
Uh,
hang up.
That's a pretty good one. Yeah. Well, we got to figure out all these ways. I know there's like people on YouTube that are getting like millions of views and stuff that are scamming the scammers, and they're like hackers, and they've figured out how to
Yeah.
get in on the webcams of the call centers in India. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, that's a rabbit hole on YouTube that you can go down for hours, if not
Uh-huh.
days.
Yeah. So we got to get those people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got to take them out. So that's one of the things that I guess what Energy Sage does is it's a place where people can go to find and shop around for installers, stuff like that,
Yeah,
I guess. So maybe you want to probably know more about it than I do. You want to,
I would hope so.
yeah, I could just make it
Yeah,
up.
it's that is true, and see how far you can go. The rule is fake it till you make it. But
Mhm.
the way Energy Sage functions for a consumer is they find us organically, they find us through partnerships, they come through and register, and they're able to receive multiple quotes, compare them side by side, and see what the best option is for them. The way Energy Sage functions on the B2B side of things is we're making sure that we vet installers before they come on. So they need to show proof of insurance, they need to show contractor's license, they need to show that they've been in business for 3 years or longer. They need to show NABCEP because in some states NABCEP is required.
And even if it's not required, of course, it's like really good to have. And I imagine you still that's part of the
Yeah,
weighing of the companies. And then
yeah,
when you're weighing a company that has NABCEP, like some of these are probably like big companies where they have thousands of people working for them. So of course, some company with thousands of people working for it is going to have NABCEP people, but there's going to have a lot that aren't.
so what I found is there's some companies that just have one person who's NABCEP certified, and they'll say that their company's NABCEP certified. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I think you're missing the point of the NABCEP credentials, but
Mm-hmm.
it works
Yeah.
for in some capacities. So there's definitely workarounds behind it, but
Yeah.
we're very much making sure that we're properly vetting the installers. So like sales organizations cannot come onto Energy Sage because it just doesn't make sense for the consumer point of view, right? You're comparing quotes from what you think are contractors. Then all of a sudden you decide to go with an organization, then they're going to push you off and have you sign a contract with another company. It's just like the transparency side that Energy Sage is like one of our core values, like just not there anymore. So we're very particular with who we partner with and who we don't partner with, which provides value to the consumer and what we're doing in the space there too. So it's been fun to see what that looks like. And we expanded into all 50 states, and it was really interesting talking to installers in Alaska, North Dakota, places where solar is not very like prominent, but hearing what their business model is. We were talking to a guy in Alaska, and
I
he
used to
was
live
saying
there.
that,
Yeah.
did you really?
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
What brought you out to Alaska?
I was on a walkabout. I just decided to go cruise around and change my life. And
Cool.
just,
Were
yeah,
you like a salmon fisherman at all while you were out there? I feel like that's the job to
my
do when you're there.
brother lives up there. So they have like a sustenance license, and they can go feed themselves, and they can do gill netting instead of just line fishing and stuff like that. And so I'll go on the boat with them, but I'm not allowed to do it. Yeah.
Fair, fair.
Yeah.
But the installs up there are wild.
Huh.
Like the panels will go up and down the way that this guy was doing the installs. Because when it's like dead of winter and there's no sunlight, the panels will go up.
Yeah, it's
So
pretty
it'll
close to a
get
90-degree
some
chill,
energy.
probably facing
Yep.
south.
And then
Yeah.
it'll go all the way back down to the roof during the
Uh-huh.
summer. It's super fascinating.
And the summertime, the sun can even go
Yeah.
north if you're far enough north, like at midnight.
Which is crazy. So
Uh-huh.
it's been really interesting just talking to quality qualified contractors throughout the country in every state and seeing how they run their business and how that aligns with Energy Sage and what goes there. Yeah.
Yeah, NABCEP has this thing where you sign an ethics pledge before taking their exam that you will be ethical and all that kind of stuff. And then if you
Yeah.
are unethical, they can take away your certification.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I think that's a good thing because then it like keeps companies in check and stuff like that. I don't know how much they do it, but they do have that ability. And how about Energy Sage? So like you might find one company and it's like they start off being really good and then you accept them and stuff like that. And then somebody else buys the company and it's some slash and burn CEO that's just like trying to scam everyone. I've seen that happen before. So I guess you would kick them out of the network.
We have no problem walking away. The nice thing about Energy Sage on the B2B side of things is you could cold call an solar installer and they know who Energy Sage is, that there's no shortage of people that want to partner with us.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So we have no problem
Hmm.
walking away from someone if it's bad ethics, bad business practices, and we find out about it. A lot of the reasons why we would find out about it is consumers call us
Yeah.
because we were the ones that connected them,
Uh-huh.
and they'll say,
Yeah.
"Look, we signed a contract, we made payments, they never even showed up," and we're like, "Okay, that's something to flag."
For sure. Yeah.
The nice thing for a consumer too is we're another advocate for them. Like they're
Hmm.
not in the trenches by themselves with the solar installer. Like they need something done, they call us, we call them and advocate for the homeowner on their behalf too. So we very much tell them like, look, we will guarantee we will help you throughout this process. And if it's not that installer, come back in, we'll help you with find another person.
Yeah. You know what I was even thinking this morning is that we should come up with a solar consumer certification. And we could just
Interesting.
say something like, you should not be buying solar if you don't know what a kilowatt hour is.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be long. It could be like a little 2 hour thing or something like that. And it would just give the consumer the information that they need to buy something.
Yeah.
It's like you don't buy a car if you don't know how to drive, and you spend at least a couple hours learning how to do that usually.
Hopefully more than a couple
Uh,
hours. Hopefully.
and to fly an airplane, you have to fly for at least 10 hours with an instructor before you can solo, uh,
Yeah.
which is not much
That's not much at
for
all.
being
That's
able to
like
fall out
kind
of the
of
sky.
concerning that
Yeah.
it's 10 hours
Yeah.
and not longer.
I think they tell you that to get you in the door. And then I don't know if anybody takes 10 hours because then the instructor has to sign you off. So it's,
Okay.
yeah, it's probably more like 30 or something like that on average. I don't know. Unless somebody's really good at video games, you never know.
Well, I thought I was gonna be a pilot growing up, and somehow I ended up at Delta's headquarters. I was hanging out with their CFO. Forget how I ended up there. I was in college doing it. And he knew that I was like interested in being a pilot. So I was like, oh, this is gonna be awesome. So he's, do you want to go into the flight simulator and try it? And I said, yeah, sure, that'd be awesome. I know how to do this. Crash the plane. He's like, you want to do it again? I was like, yeah, sure. Crash the plane. He turns around and he looks at me. He's like, I don't think a pilot's the right choice for you.
If you had no training at all, I think anybody would have crashed the plane. Was it like also a simulator for a big old Boeing or something like that? Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. Like I would probably crash one of those, even if, with a pilot's license for the little plane. The biggest problem with an airplane is you going too slow and then you fall out of the sky.
Yeah,
So
or you just missed the runway, which is what I
yeah,
did. And
yeah.
having the CFO of Delta telling you, I don't know if being a pilot is the right choice for you,
Uh,
says a lot.
yeah, but he's a CFO. Let's see if he could not crash it too.
That's true. I did
Uh,
not push back and ask him to do it.
uh
So maybe I should have. Hindsight's
Yeah,
2020 on that one.
you better go back. Yeah, yeah. We interrupt you for a very important announcement. Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast has been brought to you by Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. That's right, Sean White is sponsoring his own podcast, and he wants to remind you to go check out some of his classes. You can go to SolarSean, that's solar, SEAN.com, and then click on the links to check out his classes. You can check out his Heatspring classes, and you can also hire him to teach classes for you, like at your company, something like that. Now back to the show. So when you go into the Energy Sage website, I know that they want you to enter your information, where you live, and all that kind of
Yep.
stuff. And I know I've gone on there before too, and I'm like, I don't feel worried like, oh, I'm just doing this because not because I want to buy solar, I already have it, but I'm just like teaching solar and want to play with the
Yep.
tool, and I don't want to like waste people's time and get sales calls and all that kind of stuff. So what happens if somebody does fill out all the forms with the house and all that kind of stuff and the email address?
Yeah. The beautiful thing about Energy Sage is we are like protect the customer at all costs. So we're not your typical lead generating company. We consider ourselves more of a sales channel. And what I mean by that is we're helping that installer and homeowner get the contract
Mhm.
signed. But with that, the homeowner doesn't have to put their phone number in there. They don't want to.
Mhm.
Or they could put their phone number in and say, I only feel comfortable with Energy Sage calling me, no one else.
Oh, so there's a
So an
little
energy
way where
advisor.
you can
Yeah.
check it off. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then we're not handing out that email
And
like their
probably,
personal email. It's an
uh-huh.
EnergySage protected email. So if you go through and you register, you get approved, you receive quotes, all of that messaging from installers is coming through EnergySage to you.
Okay.
So you can unsubscribe if you're like, this is too much, I don't want to do it. You can just hit
Uh-huh.
the unsubscribe button
Okay.
and
Yeah.
cut off all messaging if you want to, and then come back to EnergySage. So like we're very much the way I like to explain it is we're really the only ones in the industry where we take the salesperson out of the driver's seat and put the homeowner in the driver's seat. And the solar company and the salesperson has to ride along on the consumer's journey, but they're in control of where they want to turn, where they want to go, not a company telling them what they should and shouldn't do, and when they should do it and how they should do it.
Okay. All right. I should go play around with it
Yeah, you
a
should.
little bit more. And then there's also the address, and you need the address to be able to do a quote on the house. So to the people that you have vetted that get to, do a proposal for the house, do they like sign something that says they're not going to go use your address for anything? I guess probably something like that.
So we've had that happen before,
Mm.
and homeowners have called us and said, this person showed up at my door. I didn't let him. So like again, it goes back to
And you
holding
fire those
installers
people.
accountable for it.
Yeah.
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 But also on top of that is like we tell the installers when we bring them on, like if you're going to go and door knock them and just use the addresses to knock their doors, this isn't going to work
Mm.
because the reason they're coming to EnergySage is because they
They don't.
don't want you to knock their door.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you doing that is not helping you gain or grow your business. It's actually hurting you and hurting your brand and hurting your relationship with that homeowner on the door that they knocked. And also, they're probably not going to open their door for you either.
Hmm. Yeah. You probably have a lot of stories like that guy, Senator Donate, about unethical salespeople. And I think he was talking about them like marking up, like doubling the price of what it should be,
Yep.
that kind of thing, and selling a 20-year contract to a 90-year-old lady or that kind of thing. And I think part of his law, I think too, was that there was an opt out. Like even if you sign a solar
Yep.
contract, there's a certain time period. I think that's all
Yep.
for with any construction contract in California. There's that, but
Mhm.
every state's different. But in Nevada, there's a protection where, especially, I guess it's really common to sign up senior citizens. Maybe some of them are on their way to the nursing home or they have halfway to Alzheimer's and all that kind of stuff. And so that would protect these people from
Yep.
signing a contract going, oh, this nice young man came over today and we decided to save the planet together.
Yep. The policy allowing the homeowner to go back and say, I didn't know what I was signing. This wasn't right and this wasn't ethical is a huge policy that just is in total support of homeowners and doing right by the homeowner. And I'm thrilled that it's in place. Like it is awesome. Like that law that they came out with has teeth to it, which
Mhm.
is great. Because if it didn't have teeth, people would just brush it off and be like, I'm good. The going back to that though, it's really interesting. About 2 or 3 hours before that bill was signed, it was taken off the table because the larger players in the space found out about it and they run their business off of door-to-door sales and 1099 employees that they were able to get that bill off the table. People found out about it, called the senator and the district attorney, and they were able to put it back on.
Cool. Yeah.
But before it was signed, 2 hours before it was signed, it was taken off and put it back on. So there was a lot of pushback on it, which is super fascinating.
Yeah. One thing that does worry me is some of these bigger companies that have the deep pockets are making a lot of money off of this kind of stuff, the unethical sales. And they might be making big contributions, not just to politicians, but also to solar organizations that were the lobbyists that are meeting with the politicians and making the rules and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So we got to really stand up for the consumers and all that. And I've seen the unethical sales thing too get to like out a lot of press. In fact, I think Senator Donate, was it like Time Magazine or something, wrote a big
Yeah.
article, and I think I might even
Yeah.
read that. before he gave that speech, like maybe a few months before or something like that. And it was just like they're going after this. And people are complaining like, oh, the residential solar industry is having a problem, or it's not growing as fast as it was, or it might be like shrinking back a little bit. And part of that has to do with things like net metering 3 in California, where you don't get the same rate for exporting and stuff like that. But I think it's almost underrated how much the unethical sales people are messing with solar. And so that's nice to have somebody in between what you're doing that kind of cuts them out of the picture, because also these people that are doing the sales, I guess, they can go out there and, make up a price that's double, and then they get all that extra money. And it just,
especially with third party ownership.
yeah.
With leases and PPAs, it's easier for them to increase their bottom line rather than selling a cash or a loan, because I'm going to lower your monthly payment by this. And they're not showing this is the dollar per watt deal. This is how much you can save on your utility bill. These are the monthly payments that you pay X company. It's an easier sale because it's way more digestible for the homeowner, but also it's way easier for the salesperson to just line their pockets on it, because they could essentially save that homeowner $300 on their electric bill per se. But like in reality, they're only going to save them $100 on their electric bill. And the consumer doesn't know any better. Like, how is the consumer supposed to know? If they're not fact checking or going up against anything else to compare it, they're just going saying, I'm saving money. This is a good deal for me. I'm going to take it.
Yeah. Yeah. And the solar industry too started off, I guess, like in the 70s with solar hot water and all these rebates. And it was like Jimmy Carter time, and people were just like nailing things on the roof and not even turning them on and making money off of these rebates. And older people that I talked to were around when all that was happening, and it gave solar a bad reputation for a long time. And it took us quite a while to undo that reputation. And now we have some other people that were doing that. Maybe, like, I always like to be optimistic, and I was just thinking that maybe everything is for a reason. And so now we have a different administration, and it's not so green environmental, and things get leaner. And when things get leaner, there's not any leftover extra money for the people that are going to make $20,000 to put in their pocket or something for selling a couple of solar systems. So maybe that will weed some of that stuff out. And I actually just had one of the people call me today that's like obviously a solar salesperson and wanting to take my class too. And I've seen a few of those recently. So I think that's a really good thing too, is it's like it's okay to keep these people in solar sales, but they need to be educated, and they need to be doing it for the right reasons and know what they're doing.
Didn't see it come out with a sales ethics certification that you need to have, or they're writing some sort of policy. I think that's supposed to come out this year. They were editing it in October, so revising it, but there's something along the lines of sales ethics for whoever is selling solar needs to show some sort of certificate that they took like an hour-long class on sales ethics or something like that. I know Heatspring's starting to offer some things of that nature.
Yeah, Heatspring has
which
like
is
a
awesome
solar ethics class. I keep seeing it on the banner every day. Let's see.
It was up on the banner yesterday, so I would assume that it's still up there. But I think a lot of that is due to what SIA is rolling out, showing that you've taken a course on it. The problem is like the smaller installers are like, that's just another thing that we have to pay for. We're doing the right things already, but it's another course that we need to make sure that all of our salespeople pay for, and becomes another expense. And to your point, I think what's going to end up happening is there's going to be some contraction in the space, very much consolidation, and it might be good for the industry.
Yeah, yeah. And I know like they say that in a lot of countries, maybe most countries, that you can buy residential solar for $1 a watt. And some of it is because the equipment's cheaper if you don't care about ethical labor. So that is one benefit to paying a little bit more, is you get more, you don't have to worry about essentially what they call forced labor. It's like a polite word of saying something much worse. But here is, I'm looking at the Heatspring page, and there's a banner at the top, and it says, every person in solar sales and operation should take our new free course, plus get one NABCEP CEU, and it's called Introduction to Ethics in Solar Sales. I'll put this in the show note with a link to get to it. And it's got so far just 22 students in there. They get a NABCEP CEU, and there's some guy up there on video. Takes an hour and 7 minutes of video lectures. So looks,
I might take it tonight.
yeah.
I might be the 23rd person.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Maybe I should
I'll
do it
let you know
too.
how it is.
I'll
Yeah.
race you through it. Yeah. But I think that's like super important. I think we were talking about making it required for my NABCEP PV technical sales course, where I help people pass the NABCEP PV technical sales exam,
Yeah.
which goes like a little bit deeper into stuff and the numbers and compounding and all that kind of stuff. But it would add an extra hour to all the videos they have to take. And so that's the question is, should we put it in there or not? But
At that point, what's another hour?
yeah. Okay. I think that's,
I
yeah.
mean,
And
how
it's,
long is that course already? It's pretty long.
yeah. Yeah. It's long. I'd have to look up exactly how many hours it is. And then even my classes, however many hours they are, it'll change sometimes day to day when I'm making new videos and stuff like that. But
Fascinating.
yeah. Yeah. So I think, but yeah, that's super, super important. So I know that Energy Sage also doesn't just do residential. You're doing some, what do you call it? CNI, commercial and industrial, or commercial rooftops,
Yeah.
carports, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. We're very much trying to figure out the SMB market, the small medium business market, because it's an untapped space. And that range from like a 50 kilowatt to a 500 kilowatt or a megawatt project, no one's really seemed to figure out. And it's people doing large scale CNI projects or residential, and they'll do one-off smaller SMB installs. But what we found is there's no one industry or one vertical that makes sense for
Mhm.
them to go solar. It is business by business. And we've given a couple talks. We've helped residential installers get into the commercial industrial space by giving them a smaller project and giving them like bigger projects so that they
Mhm.
can gain that experience, get that referral base going to really start building a model. We've seen some installers go from strictly residential to 3 or 4 years down the road, strictly commercial. And it's been fascinating to see that growth. And I think it's going to continue to grow because the domestic content adders, what goes in there on the commercial industrial side of things. People at NABCEP were talking about the residential ITC going away. And I'm like, geez. And I was like, what about the commercial? And they're like, I don't think they're going to touch the commercial side of things. So it's been fascinating to see people's opinions on residential versus commercial at NABCEP last week and how people were viewing it. And the interest level of that SMB and larger scale CNI is really there. It's just how do you do it? Because a residential salesperson switching over to commercial sales is really tough.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about people switching from residential to commercial, but what about, I haven't heard, you said you heard people talking about getting rid of the ITC, but is there any substance to that?
I don't think so. I think a lot of it's hearsay.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. Yeah.
I don't think so either.
Yeah. I think
It's
that some people are just like, oh, I hate that president so bad. He's going to, you know, and it's like, you got to remember too that like you going back, no matter who's in charge, that ITC is pretty much nobody's ever canceled it. Trump didn't cancel it with his first administration. Bush actually signed it for 8 years, when like
yeah,
the first time that it went for a long
yep,
time. And solar grew a lot when Trump was president. It's just, I think a lot of people too think that the president makes every decision in the whole world. And it's just
hmm
not really that way, like in the news, and it makes it seem like all that. But there's
yeah,
certain types of momentum that happen, and there's a lot of just like showmanship. And they say, we're going
yeah,
to do this and we're going to do that. But I think that ITC is there to stay for all different forms. One of the things that I also
totally.
try to advocate for is there's two things. And one of them is like the solar sales process. But the other one is for when there's an incentive to not let it go away suddenly, to not
Yeah,
change things suddenly, to not make this industry so solar coaster. So when they changed to net metering 3 in California, what was it like, I don't know, 13 or 15,000 people lost their jobs the next year
yeah,
because everybody signed up a year earlier. So all of a sudden there's double the jobs and then they cut it in half. And so quick changes are just not good for business. any kind
No.
of quick change. If they're going to get rid of the ITC, which someday they will, I'm sure, like in the next million years, whatever it is, probably less than that. But to just like 1% here, 1% there, like to step
Yeah.
it down. Like when we had that Governor Schwarzenegger, the governor, the Jolly Green governor, the California Solar Initiative, the expected performance based buy down or something like that, I think it was called. And it was just gradually like the more people signed up for the rebate, the less the rebate would be. And so it gradually went down and it didn't cause any interference. In fact, the price of solar went down faster than the rebate went down. So it was still a better deal to buy now than to buy it later. Yeah.
Yeah. It makes complete sense.
Everybody should know too that it's possible for solar to be $1 a watt, where it's $3 a watt or even more in a lot of places in the United States, because there are a lot of people in this world buying residential solar for $1 a watt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's getting cheaper.
Yeah.
Like there are places in Arizona and Texas where installers on our platform are quoting below $2 a watt. Like we're getting there.
Awesome.
It's happening. And
Uh-huh.
that's the point of EnergySage, right? Comparison shopping. You need to be competitive. It's not a race to the bottom, but you need to be
Yeah.
competitive on your pricing and do right
And
by the customer. So
yeah. And a lot of that money is probably going to the people that are doing the sales or the unethical sales. They call it soft cost and
yeah,
costs. And I remember SIA did something a couple of, I don't know, maybe it's 5 years ago now, where they were saying the soft costs were for residential solar were $1 a watt. And
yep.
that's like how much solar costs in Australia or something like that.
Yeah, it's super fascinating. I think going back to your point about the ITC, I don't think it's going away either. It's bipartisan, like
Mm-hmm.
going through. And the best example I have is Newsom versus DeSantis,
Uh,
and DeSantis not signing the bill to cancel net metering and Newsom signing the bill to cancel net metering.
yeah.
And that's a red versus blue state right there. There's your example. People want energy independence. Like they truly want that.
Uh-huh.
And VPP programs scare me a little bit. I think they're great at the moment, but like the virtual power plants, because the utilities will still control the energy. It's taking away that energy independence that consumers are looking for. It's saving their utility bills, but like it takes away that energy independence that they're not in control of how that battery is used because they don't own that battery. So I'm curious because PG&E was trying to roll out a VPP program. I think they did with Sunrun and Tesla last summer. Like Vermont, Green Mountain Power is doing it. It's great at the moment, but like the reason why solar continues to stick around is the energy independence side of things. And if we keep giving more and more power to the utility companies, that's losing the energy independence side of things of why someone wants to put solar on their roof and storage in their home. And it's really interesting to see where VPP goes in the next 2 or 3 years and how it takes off.
That's interesting what you said about was it DeSantis and Newsom doing the opposite.
Yeah.
So I guess that's what you know is like with politicians always lie and do the opposite of what they say. So maybe Newsom's less green than DeSantis in some ways. Like
Well, so
kind of blows
DeSantis
your
didn't
mind.
do it for the green policies. He
Uh-huh.
did it to save jobs. If I sign this bill, I'm going to put a lot of people in Florida out of business.
Huh.
And we saw that happen with NEM 2.0 to the net billing tariff, or we call NEM 3.0. Like we saw a lot of people go out of business and lose their jobs. Like
Yeah.
when you make those immediate decisions to cancel something, go through all of that, people lose their jobs. California right now, what's happening there, they're thinking about canceling the grandfathering of the people who are in like NEM 1.0 and NEM 2.0 and like shortening it.
Yeah, I know that would be terrible. Like when you sign up for something and you depend on it and then they change it, that's just should be illegal.
Should be.
That would affect me because I have it over my roof. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I can't believe they're even talking and considering that.
Yeah.
That one drives me nuts. I can look, I get canceling net metering and moving to the net billing tariff, incentivizing storage. I'm not for it, but I understand why they did it. And
Yeah.
like
I think it's
not
a
letting grandfather people
yeah.
in, shortening that window, I'm like, that's bad. That's just a bad ethical, moral principle.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think even though that they, like you said, yeah, you understand why they do it, but they shouldn't have just done it overnight to where the
No.
return on investments like double the years or something. So it takes all of a sudden double the years. So what's going to happen is everybody's going to sign up, and there's the solar industry is going to really grow for that last year. And then all of a sudden there's going to be a lot of people losing their jobs, unemployment, bankrupt companies, all that kind of stuff. Instead of going from whatever it is, let's say somebody's paying like 50 cents a kilowatt hour, getting 50 cents a kilowatt hour credit for exporting,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden it's 2 cents or whatever it is. Let's take a couple of years to just go 50, 49, 48,
Phase it
47.
out.
Yeah.
That's what they did before they extended the ITC. Before they extended until what, 2033 or 2032, it was phased out. It was 26%. I think it went down to 20% the next year. Like phase it out. Don't just immediately just say,
Uh-huh.
we're doing this now. And everyone else, you're going to suffer the
Yeah.
consequences.
And
So figure it out.
yeah. And I think that one, what was it? Was it like, but it did go down. It was like, I thought it was going down like too big of steps even. I'm
Yep.
sure I can't remember exactly if it was going to go from 22 to 10. There was some kind of big step in there
It
that was
was,
just like
yeah.
make the economy terrible and stuff like that. And they just need to like do it gradually, and it might strengthen the economy. It's like I exercise a lot and stuff, like would going to run a marathon without training or something. I don't know. But it's just you got to like
It's a bad idea.
you can
That's
get
what that is.
stronger. You might get stronger if you did it slowly, and you're just going to hurt yourself if you do it all at once. Yeah.
Well, it allows people to adapt. It allows people to figure out how to sell without the 30% tax credit. They have to then sell with a 20% tax credit. It helps people figure it out along the way instead of just like jumping off a cliff. You're now like, it allows you to walk down the hill to the bottom where you'll like land safely because you're walking down, not jumping off a cliff.
Yeah. They should put us in charge.
I agree. I've been
Yeah.
telling a lot of people that, and
Uh-huh.
I'm glad that you said it, and it wasn't me who came up with that
Yeah.
idea this
Okay.
time.
Yeah. So let's make a few calls, or I'm sure that probably like Newsom and DeSantis are listening right now. So come on, you
Absolutely.
guys, put us in charge. I mean,
Yeah.
we've got like Sean White and Erik Holvik.
Yep.
You
We
know,
know it's right.
we're the people. Yeah. Great. Yeah. And then, yeah, I noticed that Energy Sage is doing some community solar. So,
Yep.
how is that working? Are people getting like multiple proposals for community solar?
Yeah.
And is a lot of times too, are the community solar programs full? Is it hard to get into?
It's hard to get into. There's definitely some waiting lists, but we've brought on more developers and more
Mhm.
projects and going through that side of things. So we're very much giving the homeowner like, hey, this has a waiting list. This is open. Like, this is the pricing. This is what it looks to save money. Problem with community solar, it's just complicated, right? Like
Yeah.
it's two different forms of payment. Who takes care of what? How does it function? And just the educational piece is very different than educating someone on putting solar on their roof.
Do you want to define community solar or you want me to?
You can define it. Go
Okay.
for it.
Because I was asking somebody yesterday to define it, and they're like, you do it. So it's pretty much if the solar is owned by a community of people. So they'll put up a solar farm somewhere on the other side of town, maybe. And then you can treat it like you have solar on your roof, and then you can live in an apartment, you can live in a condo, you can move next year and all that. And you get the benefits of making more electricity on a sunny day than a dark day and all that kind of stuff. And there'll be like different community solar programs in different states. And some states it's good, some states it's bad, but it's cool. Some people would even call it like virtual net metering. And another thing too that we didn't define, I think, is ITC, investment tax
Mm.
credit. So if you invest $100,000 in solar, you get a 30% of that 100,000 is $30,000, and it's like a gift certificate that's good for paying taxes.
Great.
Yeah.
Love good credit. I actually signed up for community solar and I had community solar in my old apartment in Boston. It was great. I had saved me like 10% on my utility bill. Like it wasn't
Cool.
a lot, but it still made a difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good program.
Yeah, and you get to be all green and all that kind of stuff. I think a lot of times that there's resistance against these things because the utilities. That's hey,
Yeah.
that's competition.
Usually resistant comes from utilities. Some
Yeah.
utilities are forward thinking.
Uh-huh.
Some utilities are, I want more money.
Uh-huh.
Hmm.
Yep. The green versus the green. Yeah. All right. So is there anything else that we should cover?
There's always a lot that we can
Uh-huh.
cover. I think ultimately you covered a lot of what EnergySage does in the space and how we're able to help consumers, but also installers. And we're very much just trying to be an advocate for people to do the right thing. And that's what we care about. And we want to make sure that we're holding people accountable to that. And you all are doing the same. You're going through with the PVA, the associate's exam, everything that goes into that. Super helpful to be able to continue to educate people in the space, especially people that are selling and people that are installing, that they're doing the right thing for the homeowner, because that's what EnergySage cares about. That's what we should all care about, because if it's a better customer experience, it's better for the industry. So it's nice that you're doing it too, and happy to be on the podcast with you to talk about this stuff.
Thanks, Erik Holvik. And also at the NABCEP conference, there's a guy who's on the NABCEP board of directors, Jeff Spees, that a lot of people know, and he has a movie called Solar Roots that he put out, but he's changing it and it's going to come out pretty soon. And kind of the premise of the movie is that solar was started by the hippies. And so a lot of hippies out there, they have a different meaning, definition of sage. And it's like you light this stick of incense and then you sage stuff. And so when you put on a new solar system, you guys ought to send them a little bit of sage so they can go chase away the evil spirits and get all the good karma into that PV system, so it captures all the positive energy from the sun and none of that dark matter or whatever.
We should start, for every install that happens on EnergySage, we should start putting sage on their roof. That's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
We can go talk to our marketing team on that.
Yeah, maybe you ought to have a little box on your website when people are buying it and you check it off. Are you a hippie? And then if they are, then you send them like just a little bit of sage for when they get their PV system. And I'm sure.
Not a bad idea. Not a bad idea.
All right. Very cool. Thanks so much for being on. And what is it? EnergySage.com, I think probably. Is that where?
Nice and simple.
Nice and simple. And you can find me at solarsean.com, where you can sign up for classes and get yourself NABCEP certified, get the NABCEP associate, and you can also maybe see some pictures that I pirated from EnergySage, but I gave them lots of credit. And do I have permission, Erik, to use the images?
Yes,
See,
you do.
I got it, and I've done that before. All right, everybody, thanks for listening, and we'll have a whole bunch of cool stuff in the show notes. Woo!